law effectively killing the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution as we know it. There will be no such thing as online privacy anymore for any citizen. And this seems to be just the beginning, as the government today has taken total executive control over Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and various other online.
Those that are working with regulators and are working with banks.
I agree.
Ripple would be an example.
Ripple would be an example, right.
Now, this is and I can imagine in the next 5 years, instead of us doing sterling against the dollar or sterling against yen and doing these kinds of transactions, we'll do sterling versus Ripple. And the reason being, dollar right now is a 2-day settlement. With something like Ripple, you could do settlement in seconds. And I think that there's a future there where the guy that's trading spot FX today will be trading spot FX against Ripple in the future, in the next 2 or 3 years. So I think that Ripple has a great future because it's right now supported by all the banks and by all the regulators.
And it has an elastic monetary base, right?
So well, if we take that and you go to the blockchain ledger, if you take that concept that you're discussing, I have no problem with it. I agree with it. But you're talking about money. You're talking about transaction, medium of exchange. There has to be something behind it, and that's where I'm going to pull this conversation back to gold. There has to be some sort of reserve asset. The problem with fiat currencies right now is that they can print as much as they want. Digitally or whatever. It's not tied to anything, and so as a result, the value of the money can be negated. It can be destroyed over time, and it is destroyed over time.
I think one of the biggest sales pitches that folks that enjoy Bitcoin talk about is the fact that it's finite. And yet you have a fork, and boom, here's another currency based off of this one. You have another fork, more currency, another fork, more currency.
The fact that it's finite
it's totally finite.
Is actually one of the worst things about Bitcoin, and it shows that really smart developers and really smart engineers don't know anything about monetary economics. Because if you understand monetary economics, you don't want hyperinflation, you don't want money everywhere, but the money supply has to grow a little bit. As the economy is growing, if the money supply doesn't grow and the economy is growing, that's inherently deflationary. Each coin is going to get you more and more because you've capped it out. Well, if it's deflationary, if you look at, say,
why, when we broke away from the gold standard, are countries building their reserves in gold?
This may be a break away from the dollar standard. And one thing that's very, very interesting about this administration that's different from others is for the first time, the U.S. Treasury's talked about using SWIFT as a weapon. Now, SWIFT is essentially the way that you can trade dollars around the world. If you're cut off from SWIFT as a sovereign country, you're cut off from the dollar, and you need to find other ways of doing financing. Now, certainly, places like China now are doing an oil contract in Chinese currency. You've also have all of these central banks in emerging markets and in countries that are having difficulties with the U.S. start to buy gold aggressively, and they're getting out of U.S. treasuries. And so what you're seeing here is maybe this dollar standard that replaced the gold standard now slowly start to dissipate as the U.S. starts to look at the dollar as being a weapon.
Does that create an opportunity for the Bitcoin crowd or the crypto crowd?
I think crypto is completely irrelevant to all of this because I think that the holders of crypto or the holders of Bitcoin really have very little understanding of what's going on in a macro environment. They're buying it because they see that's the future for a technology, as opposed to folks buying and selling dollars, buying and selling gold, do that because they see this is the future of macroeconomics. And I think they're both very, very separate issues.
Do either one of you have an opinion on Bitcoin? Because a lot of the younger crowd, not Bitcoin, but crypto in general, a lot of the younger crowd sees that as a replacement for gold.
Guilty.
I don't know that. I think it's hard to say crypto in general, other than the technology, the digital distributed ledger. But there are, last time I looked, 1,600 separate cryptocurrencies listed on major exchanges, and some of them are tiny and some of them are frauds, no doubt about it, and Bitcoin's the biggest. Bitcoin has no use case other than tax evaders, terrorists, and worse.
I see that.
Yeah, and it's so it'll get to $200 a coin, which is kind of a residual criminal value. But all this stuff about $6,000, it's all nonsense.
I'm not sure, but I think Doug Cass agrees with your target price.
Yeah, okay.
So I think I'd like to, when it comes to these cryptocurrencies, cryptos are transactional. So I agree very much with Jim. Bitcoin, I don't see the transactional value necessarily in Bitcoin.
They're not medium of exchange. But could it...
Global liquidity to any market, any country, any place, anywhere. Fully exchangeable to any currency, asset, or commodity. Transactions are settled in 4 seconds. XRP is traded 24/7, 365 days a year, everywhere in the world. Removing friction from global trade, removing barriers, removing borders. XRP transfers value anytime and all the time. From you to any place on Earth.